Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. We're waking up with watches this weekend, and everything is for sale. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. We are always looking to build inventory. We buy, we trade, we sell. So if you're looking to sell one watch or an entire collection, we pay cash, we pay fast, no upper limit on value paid. We will buy your whole collection outright. To buy, trade, or sell, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Today, a spectacular piece from Grand Seiko, a rare full platinum example from the folks at Grand. This is the SLGH007. It is a 140th anniversary piece celebrating 140 years of the Seiko company. It is a limited edition of 140 pieces, 40 millimeters in platinum, and it features the brand new 9SA5 automatic movement, which is as gorgeous as the dial. The dial, by the way, a blackened simulated wood grain designed to symbolize the growth of a tree over time, which is a wonderful metaphor for the slow, deliberate evolution of Seiko and Grand Seiko. That is why it's used. Unlike most Grand Seiko watches, which do not use precious metal elements on the dial, this one does. The logo, the frame for the date, the hands, as well as the indices, as intricately and finely finished by hand as any Grand Seiko dial furniture, but these are all white gold. We've got a bit of a Darth Vader look with a black dial and a black date disc, and you can see the fastening of the hands, the nuance of the finish, polish, and satin. World class. Also, we have a smooth sweep to the seconds hand, but it's not spring drive. It's a high beat, 10 beats per second, 36,000 vibrations per hour, massive upgrades. You could see on the reverse of the watch where the movement is not just now larger than the old 9S, but it has beautiful architecture. You could see the now twin mainspring barrels. There's a winding bridge adjacent. A full balance bridge, now dual anchored with a free sprung balance, and in a rarity for Grand Seiko, an overcoil hairspring. It has a dual impulse escapement, direct and indirect with tangential contact, very similar in many ways to the Omega coaxial, and it beats away with a hum, 10 beats per second. Thanks to that new escapement, the free sprung architecture, and the overcoil hairspring, once adjusted in 6 positions, not the chronometer standard of 5. This is a movement that's accurate to +5, -3 seconds per day. A beautiful watch in every regard. It's actually quite compact, being just over 46 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and you can see 40 millimeters in diameter. It's a nice size for almost any wrist, featuring a full platinum folding clasp, which you can see PT950 on the swing arm, a handsome piece that'll help prevent against dropping your watch while you don it or remove it at bedside. Zooming out, you could see that the watch fits well on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. Artisanal in finish, it uses the Grand Seiko and Seiko Zaratsu finish to execute all polished facets, and that is an art that takes about 3 years to master. So this watch is both handcrafted internally and hand-finished externally. Now I have a real treat for you. 3 different examples of the latest Vacheron Constantin Overseas. This is the self-winding model, as launched with the 3rd generation Overseas back in 2016. It's 41 millimeters in diameter in glorious red gold. It features a quick release system to pop off the bracelet. The watch comes with an accessory strap in leather and an accessory strap in rubber, plus a separate deploying clasp to use with the straps. The watch is 25,000 ampere per meter anti-magnetic, 150 meters water resistant. It has plenty of luminescence. And if you look at the bracelet, it's just full of subtle refinements. Taking a look at the clasp, you have a 1.5 millimeter pull-out quick adjustment system on each side. Let's pop that open there formally. And then you have a 1.5 millimeter quick adjustment on the opposite side. Snap this one shut. Sometimes these tags get in the way. You can see the Maltese cross motif at center. By the way, pop them both out for maximum extension. But we also have many removable links for fine-tuning the size, and that on both sides of the bracelet, so you will get the right fit. There's even an intermediate size link in there in case you're in between sizes. Now, rolling around, you can see that the finish on the bracelet is as fine as anything hailing from Patek Philippe, Lange, or Audemars Piguet. In particular, the interior recesses of the bracelet links are polished for an outstanding aesthetic. On the dial, all rose gold dial furniture, logo hands, indices, as well as date frame. And the dial is actually a black polished metal base, on top of which lacquer, blue translucent lacquer, has been applied. Popping off the bracelet, you can see this is a Geneva hallmark movement, Vacheron manufacturer, caliber 5100. 2 barrels, 60-hour power reserve, a 22-karat rotor on ceramic bearings with 4 separate types of finishing. It has twin mainspring barrels. It has exemplary finish, Geneva hallmark, as you can see on the bridges, but also on the case itself, as since 2012, it has been a full watch standard, not just one of movement finish. You could see solarization on one of the barrels. The bridge anglage is outstanding, as are the stripes and the black polishing of the screws. Plus, we have the black polishing of the sinks for both the jewels and the screws, which is a rare and welcome refinement. And this is the first generation overseas to have Geneva hallmark, display back case, and a manufacturer movement all in one. Lots to love here, particularly warm and endearing take on the overseas self-winding in red gold. But let's say you want even more refinement. Well, in 2019, Vacheron launched the Overseas Generation 3 Tourbillon, and this is the boutique exclusive version of that watch. This is 42.5 millimeters in diameter, but only 10.39 millimeters thick, thanks to an ultra-slim peripheral rotor automatic movement, which we'll see in a moment. Now, as with the self-winding, and this is self-winding, we have full luminescence. We have a screw-down crown here with 50-meter water resistance, so this is suitable for swimming on the surface. Taking a look, you can see that no expense was spared with the Tourbillon. The upper bridge, in the shape of a Maltese cross, has been fully skeletonized. It has sharp outward points where the exterior bevels meet, and almost too many sharp inward angles to count where interior bevels meet. You can see that the upper bridge for the Tourbillon has been black polished and continuously rounded, and you can see that the Tourbillon is free sprung with a overcoil hairspring, handsome refinements that are welcome. Now, this movement first appeared on Vacheron dress watches back in 2018, but I'm really happy to see the 2160 peripheral rotor automatic on an overseas. Now, on the reverse side, we have more impressive feats of finish, including interior angles, mile-wide bevels, recesses for jewels and screws that have been polished for a partridge eye effect. This too was adjusted in 5 positions. You could see on both the top and the bottom of the tourbillon 1 golden chaton fixing the pivot jewel, engine turning, and actually 3 different finishes on the peripheral rotor mass. All of this with a power reserve of 80 hours, which is profoundly impressive. And yes, it too is 25,000 ampere per meter anti-magnetic, and yes, it too comes with a fully sizable bracelet that includes the micro adjustments, and the watch comes with the straps that I mentioned on the self-winding. It's just that this watch has even greater horological street cred. But there are those who prefer a more compact watch and just don't like colored gold. And for those folks, and I'm one of them, there's this, which is the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Perpetual Calendar Ultra Thin, and truly it is 41.5 millimeters in diameter. You can see it's only 8.4 millimeters thick. It's made of white gold. It too comes with accessory straps and includes the quick release bracelet system. Now, the bracelet here also includes the micro adjustments, so you're getting all of those features, but you're also getting a perpetual calendar, and it's based on a legendary movement, the JLC designed, Vacheron manufactured and finished, caliber 1120. You can see on the dial side we have plenty of lume. We have a perpetual calendar. We have white gold hands and indices, a lovely little crescent style moon phase display, and subtle use of blue printing on this anthracite base. Now, on the reverse side, you see that caliber 1120 that I promised you. This was JLC designed in 1967 as the caliber 920 at Bausch. It was designed specifically for and used exclusively by AP, Vacheron, and Patek, and that remains true to this day. It features a beryllium ring that runs all the way around the movement. There are 4 ruby rollers that support the ring so that the rotor as well as the mass can be sucked right up to the bridges and plates, so they're super close, and without those bearings, they would contact the bridges and plates under conditions of shock. But with the bearings, They can be super close and never physically touch the static structures of the movement. So the base movement is only 2.4 millimeters thick. Now you can see Geneva hallmark on both balance cock and watch. Again, full Geneva hallmark movement and fully assembled watch. 22 karat mass, quadruple finished, bevels that are even better than we saw on the last two movements, and a free-sprung gyromax style balance allowing for precise adjustment in 5 positions. This is as good as it gets. This movement no longer used on the Royal Oak Jumbo, and I mourn its passing, but you can still get it here from Vacheron on a perpetual calendar. A very, very special watch, and as with all 3 overseas on the show today, immaculately and extensively, exhaustively hand-finished with no expense spared externally. And this is gray gold, which is the type of white gold that's white all the way through and never needs to be rhodium plated. It's the good stuff, in other words. I like Parmigiani. Parmigiani Fleurier, created by Michel Parmigiani, grew out of his watch and clock restoration service, which he founded in the 70s. In 1975, he set up shop restoring watches and clocks. In 1996, with assistance from the Sandoz Family Foundation, Michel Parmigiani, by that point a legend in the industry, created a brand to operate under his own name. And this is the Tanda Quator with annual calendar. A lovely timepiece that features a retrograding date, the day, date, months listed numerically, and a north and southern hemisphere moon phase. We also have modified delta hands at center, that's the term used, that are luminescent, in a case that features Parmigiani's unique teardrop lugs that are sculpted and broken out from the case to separate the ergonomic element of the case from the canister that holds the calendar system, the dial, and the base movement. Now, it is an annual calendar, which means you only need to adjust it once a year during the jump from February to March. Here we have a matching buckle, and note how the buckle has the same profile as the lugs. That's something you can do when you're Parmigiani and your companies make every part of the watch. In fact, the only part of the watch that's really not Parmigiani made, the only major component is the strap, because Hermes is a stakeholder in the Parmigiani companies. You get this wonderfully supple, buttery smooth calfskin and alligator leather strap of the highest grade. On the reverse side, we have a handsome rotor that features a vogue or wave type pattern. Note, you'll also find it on the dial, design parallelism that I love. The watch is 40 millimeters in diameter, but it's only 45.5 millimeters from lug to lug, so it wears well on a smaller wrist, and we'll see that in a moment. You can see the twin barrel automatic winding 50-hour power reserve. Caliber PF339 is adjusted in 5 positions, which is that chronometer standard. And elements like striping and beveling, engine turning, and satination are all done handsomely and memorably right here. The watch wears well. We're going to throw it on my wrist. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference. And the 45.5 millimeter lug spacing means even a lady can wear this 40 millimeter watch. It is super short across the wrist, and you can see that well from over the top, coming nowhere near encroaching the edge. It's also flat at just over 11 millimeters thick, so it sits easily underneath the dress cuff. A wonderful all-arounder from one of the most accomplished independent brands in the business. This watch is all Parmigiani with the obvious exception, and if you buy one, you're all the richer for it, as you have a true connoisseur's piece that gives up nothing to anyone. Now let's talk about another brand that's underrated. This one belongs to a big group, and a lot of people complain that Breguet has nothing to do with Abraham Louis Breguet and his sons, to which I respond, well, yeah, duh. When was the last time a Patek or a Philippe made a watch there, or a Jaeger or a Lecoultre? When was the last time a Girard or a Perregaux made a watch at that manufacturer? And yet we esteem all of those brands for their capability. Well, consider what you can get from Breguet. This is the 3657BA Classique Grande Complication, as it's called in the catalog, though in truth, it is a complicated tourbillon, not a grand complication. That said, you're going to be impressed. Now, it's 39 millimeters in diameter in yellow gold. So 39 millimeters in diameter is a great size. The case is exhaustively handcrafted with cold rolled coining that's then finished off by hand, lugs that are inserted into the case flank welded on with the evidence of the joint removed by hand. The strap is held on both sides using screws and bars, a more expensive arrangement than spring bars, and one I prefer to see on an expensive watch. You can also see this little kerf underneath the crown so you can dig your nail in more easily. Caliber 560 is a masterpiece. Manual wind with a 50-hour power reserve. It's yellow gold gilded and entirely hand engraved. And I mean entirely hand engraved. A gorgeous scrolling across its surfaces. You can see that the base finish is a sort of circular satin, adjusted in 6 positions, not 5 like a chronometer. It's beyond belief. The anglage on the interior angles of the undercarriage, the tourbillon, you can see it's a mile wide, and it meets in those sharp interior clefts, creating that crease between angles that collide. You can also see that elements such as the screws, entirely black polished, and the jewel sinks, likewise, speak to an endless attention to detail. We also have tourbillon breguet engraved by hand, and you can appreciate that we have what is effectively the French Republican calendar, referring to June 26th, 1801. That was when Breguet first patented the tourbillon. Turn it over, things are equally interesting. We have a beautifully finished 1-minute tourbillon with an overcoil hairspring, obviously a Breguet overcoil hairspring, but the dial is deceptively complex. It is a solid disc of gold that's then cut on straight line machines and rose lathes to create many different finishes. We have écaille de poisson or fish scale. We have a lovely rosette. We have clou de Paris pyramide. We also have fired blued steel hands. We have a power reserve indicator. Power reserve here is between 50 and 55 hours. And then we have a 24-hour indicator, a linear 24-hour indicator with retrograde that matches the displayed time. So you can see it immediately jumps to 24 when I'm in setting mode. Now, I might want to know, am I looking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning? And you can see quite easily there, I'm actually looking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it's just short of 15. So, 1500 being 3 o'clock. This is correct. We have the Breguet secret signature, all of this for under $60,000. Now, it's true, Breguet didn't make this watch, but there are people at Breguet, and there are engines and atelier at Breguet, and there are talented watchmakers, designers, and craftsmen at Breguet who deserve your respect. And watches like this, had they hailed from the likes of F. Pigeon or Patek Philippe or the Grunefeld's atelier, they would cost well into 6 figures. Here, I'm talking about getting this watch for less than people pay for a 3-hand Journe Chronomètre Bleu, and from a brand that will be around forever to provide parts and service. At 39 millimeters in diameter, it's not a demanding watch to wear, and it's flat enough to fit underneath the cuff. Case, dial, movement, handmade, hand-decorated, to the highest level, literally as good as it gets. I'm also a great fan of de Bethune, which in its way is also underrated. It gets more plaudits now, and I think Denis Flageolet, the watchmaker in charge of the company, is becoming more comfortable with self-promotion, and he really shouldn't be so modest, but I will speak up for him since he rarely speaks on his own behalf in anything but French. He is the most talented watchmaker alive right now because he combines his status as a third-generation watchmaker with his experience as a trained scientist, and he is always working with advanced materials and engineering concepts, and you see that here in this glorious 44mm red gold de Bethune DB25 Power Reserve. Everything that's blue on this dial with matte finish, microlight engraving, and a lovely saturated cobalt gloss blue, that's all fired titanium. You can see a metallized track outboard for reading your minutes as well as the numerals. They too have been metallized on that surface. At center we have a microlight reductive engraving like guilloche but more contemporary, better suited to the modern format of the watch. You can see the dial features a sunken inner step. There's a satin finished track outboard for the hours. Then we have a power reserve indicator that transforms from red to silver as you wind the watch or the watch winds itself. Now, de Bethune has a patent for bluing titanium. It also has a bunch of patents for this movement. This is the 2024 automatic base, 6 days of power reserve. We have shock protection at the center of the rotor, 4 shock protection springs, each with 3 jewels to minimize friction, precious metal on the longest possible lever arm in order to maximize winding efficiency, two barrels self-adjusting, 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs on the balance, and the balance is one of Denis' early designs featuring a double-crossed yoke, so it's cruciform, it's not annular, it's not a continuous ring. The actual wheel, such as it is made of blued titanium, and the masses or bulbs of platinum to locate as much mass as possible far outboard on the balance. We have a hairspring, 2 pieces, shaped manually at de Bethune and then clamped together. This curve and this system are their own, patented, allowing them to achieve the concentric breathing properties of an overcoil in any position, but without the shock susceptibility and thickness of an overcoil. Everything that's blue, matte blue on this caseback, is also fired titanium. You could see media blasting within the hollows of the bridges and satination on the raised portions. The watch is 51 millimeters from lug to lug, and you can see super flat, only about 11.6 millimeters thick. It slides easily underneath the cuff. This is an in-demand model, as this particular combination of the stepped concentric dial and the rose gold case in the DB25 line, it is discontinued, and only a few dozen of these were ever made. A lot of people have asked for its resurrection, but so far it's not happening. This is a wonderful way to get in on the ground floor with de Bethune. It's not outrageous like the 27s and the 28s. You don't have to worry about a Star Trek dial or floating lugs or outrageous colors. This is a very traditionally beautiful fixed lug, solid dial, round case, 2-hand watch that incorporates all of the avant-garde on the reverse side. It's everything de Bethune does well, everything that makes the company notable, but in a format that's acceptable for those coming over from F.P. Journe, Moser, Carrie Voudelaine, and the Grunefelds. It's a watch that would fit well in a collection of such timepieces. It is a conservative de Bethune in some regards, but it's also a beautifully subtle one with enduring value. Now, speaking of Moser, this is not an entry-level Moser. For most people, this will not be a first Moser, although if you've got the budget and the inclination, I cannot fault it. Launched in 2022 in only 20 pieces, 40 millimeters in diameter in grade 5 titanium. This is the H. Moser & C Endeavor minute repeater. Now, it's also blessed with a spectacular gradient enamel dial. So on a base that features a hammered effect, translucent blue enamel is applied. Now, you can see a fade from light at the center to dark at the edge, so it's also a fumé or smoked dial, which is a Moser signature. Working with manufacturer Haute Complication, Moser integrated its tourbillon with a minute repeater. And it's impressive that despite the energy-intensive 1-minute tourbillon complication, and I do consider a tourbillon a complication, the watch still has a 90-hour power reserve. And the minute repeater, thanks to a titanium case and extraordinarily large gongs, the minute repeater is one of the finest sounding you will ever experience. It has volume, it has tone, it has a lyrical quality reserved for only the best, and you can see that the black polished steel strikers are beveled on their edges, coming to razor-like tips on both ends. This is as good as fine finish gets on any Moser watch, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first, let's hear it. I'm going to try not to roll over 1259. Okay, let's go. Now, this watch is extraordinary because manufacturer Haute Complication offered a great deal of input on the finishing. So whereas most Moser watches are finished to a high, albeit hybrid manual mechanical standard, this watch leans much more heavily on the manual side of that spectrum, finished like no other Moser I've ever encountered. The first thing to note is that the bridge bevels are as wide and rounded and bright as anything you'll see from the likes of Laurent Ferrier or Romain Gaultier. You could see that the structures for the train running down from the barrel to the tourbillon are entirely of steel and black polished, including rounding. You could see super sharp interior angles where bevels meet on each side of the mainspring barrel, and then the finishing of the bridge with Moser's distinctive double-crested Côte de Genève just seems that much richer and darker. This is a very special watch, and all in grade 5 titanium. It's both lighter than steel and more scratch-resistant. You can even see places where two bevels meet in sharp outward angles, little notes and nods to the true horological connoisseur connoisseur who loves the best and has the ability to pay for it. They've even innovated in the operation of the repeater, as the slide operates on a Teflon runner for a smooth feel and minimum resistance. And once again, you've got that lovely solid gold dial base with translucent Grand faux enamel on the top, and a gorgeous tourbillon that features Moser's own hairspring, escapement, and balance, as Moser makes all of these components in-house. We also get a full titanium twin trigger actuated double folding clasp, and that's a rarity on Moser watches, which tend to come with pin buckles. Throw this watch on the wrist, by the way, it looks beautiful. It's the traditional Endeavor case, super fluid with sculpted black polished lug hollows. It also has a dramatic arc of the lugs down, almost straight, 90 degrees from the case band on each side. The bezel profile is concave and it swells at 6 o'clock and at 10 o'clock. It has a wonderfully fluid look to it. And that continues on the reverse side, where you can even see that the case back itself has been curved and contoured. And you can see those Moser case hollows I was talking about. Moser cases are first machined and then hand finished. That's how they're able to get this deep sculpting. Most brands either stamp or machine and stop there. That extra combination of the machining and hand finishing is responsible for the nuance that you find in Moser cases. This is a really special piece. If you want both a great haute horlogerie independent selection and one of the finest repeaters I've ever heard, this is it. When we talk about fine finish in independent watchmaking, oftentimes it comes down to just 4 or 5 brands. And those brands generally include Lange & Theiner, Ferdinand Berthoud, Grubel Forsey, Romain Gauthier, and Philippe Dufour. And of course, Dufour is a one-man band, making so few watches. But at the time Gauthier built the landmark Logical 1, he was only crafting between 50 and 60 watches a year. And this watch, which won the GPHG Men's Complication Prize in 2013, was made in a span from 2013 to 2021, when Gauthier averaged probably 50 watches a year, of which only a handful were the Logical 1. So you can see how rare this watch is. Grand faux enamel dial in black, one of the most difficult executions, in a 43mm case, dramatically sculpted, recessed, and media blasted in white gold. Now, this is the Logical 1 from the Heritage Collection, with a more vintage look of texture, tone, and color on its dial. We have a yellow gold gilded base plate. You can see it features channeling on its edge, mirrored anglage on its flanks. There's the media blasting across its top. Note the balance cock features interior angles, rounded polish, solarization, exterior points, a free-sprung balance of Gautier's own design. And if you look carefully, you see his recursive circle and a circle wheel design. Those are his own design, made in-house. We also have his revolutionary take on the fusee and chain, a snail cam attached to a wheel driven directly by the barrel. The theoretical power reserve of the barrel is 60 hours, but it's limited to 46 because that's the fat part of the torque curve, and the watch always has some energy left. So 46 hours of power reserve that's usable, but 60 in total. So when I start pressing the trigger that winds the watch starts immediately because it's got that extra 14 hours of power reserve stored up. Now you see it's a free sprung balance with variable inertia bolts on the rim, which allows it to be adjusted precisely and to keep outstanding time. The chain features 26 jewels internally, and you can sort of see them if we tilt it. You can see those ruby jewels internally. The idea here is to minimize friction. Rather than the complexity of the fusee and chain, we get the same constant force system. As the barrel runs down and has less torque, it pulls a longer effective lever arm on the snail cam, which sends constant force to the escapement for 46 hours. You can see that the bridge in steel is satinated, polished, beveled, rounded, more interior and exterior angles than you can count. The chain itself has been black polished. You can see that there's a little crown that can be used for setting the time. The hands are both skeletonized and polished in solid gold. And when you flip the watch over, you realize that the finish runneth over. More beveling, more media blasting, more solarization, a power reserve indicator on the reverse side, and then a barrel that's internally lined with sapphires to minimize the friction of the mainspring against the barrel walls. Gautier, who is an engineer, not a watchmaker, thought of everything, and he turned to the best for his finishing standard. He turned to his neighbor in the valet de jeu, Philippe Dufour. So while the watch itself is far more audacious than any style Dufour has ever created, you can see the hand of the master in the choices made regarding decoration and the profusion of elements such as exterior points, solarization, black polish, interior angles, and hand-finished gentian wood bevels that you would be lucky to see even in passing in Geneva Seal watches. This has all of them, an embarrassment of riches, and one of the best finished watches ever made by anyone. It's big. You need a wrist of my size, 16 centimeters circumference or larger, to fully enjoy it, but it does fit. So if your wrist is 16 centimeters and up, game on. Get in the game with Romain Gaultier. It's not often that I finish a show with a Rolex. I often start with a Rolex because in general they're clickbait. But when the watch in question is a Tridor, and when the Tridor in question is a cognac dial, and when the cognac dial in question is Arabic language calendar with Eastern Arabic date, this is the ultimate watch in today's show. It's a 18039 BIC Tridor with the signature fused gold down the center links. Fundamentally a 36mm white gold date from the 1980s. This one's a 1985 serial number. And we have fused white, yellow, and rose gold. You can see rose outboard, and then yellow, and then down the center, perfectly aligned white gold. These are not mechanically joined together, pinned, or snapped together. They are fused at the metallurgical level to become one piece, and you could see arrow straight from link to link, the industrial might of Rolex really flexing here. You can also see that the case is remarkably intact. The lug shoulders are super crisp, the break from satin to polish exactly as when it left Geneva. You can also see that the lugs are full, symmetrical, and undented on both ends, and that the watch features a wonderfully sharp faceting to the fluting of its bezel. Now we have a cognac sunburst dial with gold crown, hands, and radially arrayed Roman numerals, but we have Eastern Arabic numerals, 31 of them, in fact, for the date. This is a single quickset era date, so you'll be able to play with it and enjoy all of those unique numerals and learn to speak a little bit of Arabic as well, since we have 7 days in Arabic. Inside we have the transitional chronometer caliber 3055. We have a screw-down twin lock crown. The tolerances of the clasp remain remarkably snappy and sharp today. This is a watch that gives the impression of having been rarely and carefully worn, and it is the most special watch that I can offer you on today's program. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.